Hello guys, my name is Erica Hargaden. I'm certified child sleep consultant with my private practice Babogue. I'm the creator of the Sleep series, which is an online sleep program to help you guys reach your family sleep goals, and I am a mum of 3. So there's very little that I haven't seen myself on the sleep front with my own team of kids, and I had an incredible sleep ninja in my first child who very much inspired what I now do. And I was so delighted when the team at Kaliedy got in touch with me to ask me to help you guys with your sleep questions, and I have them all here and I'm dying to get going. But I had a look through the Kaliedy website over the last couple of days, and it really is a fantastic site for expectant parents, and they're offering such supports, including like the WhatsApp messaging when you're maybe looking at what you're thinking of buying, and they have discounts when you sign up to their website. So it's definitely worth checking out, guys, for sure. So I am going to kick off and get started with answering your sleep questions. If I do have time towards the end, I will take some questions from people who maybe submit them on the live. But hello to everybody and thank you for joining us. Right, question number 1. 5-month-old waking between 6 and 6:30. First nap is around 8 a.m. Is that very early for the nap? No, not for a 5-month-old. For this age range, I would be very much still working off wake periods. So how long your child is capable of staying awake comfortably between sleep. So for this particular age range, it might be 2 hours just about. So napping, kind of around 8 o'clock is perfect. When you get kind of beyond 6 months, that's where you might try and start working towards no naps before 9, so that you can keep yourself maybe out of falling into a cycle of early waking, which early napping can enforce, but not at this age range. Okay. How to break the cycle of a 9-month-old waking 30 minutes after being put down. Not overtired, I don't think. So this for me is 2-pronged. I'd be looking at 2 things. Is your 9-month-old falling asleep independently, or is there a lot of input going into them falling asleep? If there's a lot of input into them falling asleep, when they come into light sleep, their brain will cycle and search to see that all the things that were present when they fell asleep are still there. So if you've been rocking, rolling, feeding, patting baby to sleep, then, and if it's not there when they come into light sleep, then they could wake fully. And the light sleep can come around 30 to 40 minutes in a sleep cycle, particularly with daytime and in the early evening. I'd also be looking at the timings. Under tiredness can be a reason why baby might be doing short sleeps as well. So if baby is going down marginally too early, then, and still falling asleep, then they may only do 1 sleep cycle. The other thing is that sometimes children, so it's really 3-pronged, sometimes children will need to kind of be led towards knitting up the sleep cycles, particularly with daytime sleep. So allowing a little bit of resettling time and supporting them in that might be a way to kind of break the cycle around that. But at 9 months of age, the capability to knit up sleep cycles is absolutely there. 6-month-old wakes at 5 a.m. in a dark room, follow wake windows of 2.5 hours, naps usually 1 hour in length. So this kind of goes back to the first question. So yes, the wake period is perfect, but if baby is waking at 5 and going back down for their first nap at 7:30, which would be a 2-hour wake period, then unfortunately that's reinforcing the early waking. Now, how you get yourself out of that cycle is by trying to gently push the start of the nap time forward by 5 minutes a day, so that you eventually reach no naps before 9. Now, this takes time, and families that work on my program and work with me directly will know that this will be one of the first things that I will suggest. So like if napping normally starts at 7:30, maybe day 1, try even for 7:40. Day 2, try for 7:45. And day 3, 5 minutes later. And the thinking is that the napping will shift forward with it and the start of the day will shift forward. But also you need to look at, is there anything happening at that time that could be reinforcing that waking? So like, is baby been brought into the bed with parents? Is baby getting a bottle where there wasn't a bottle maybe previously? Is even the heating clicking on at that time? Sometimes environmental factors will draw a child out of sleep, but that darkness is here, which is great. So I hope that helps that parent. 1-year-old wakes every 2 to 3 hours, only settles when breastfed help. So this would be very typical of where I would see there be a feeding dependency, whether that is breast or bottle. Again, this goes back to cycles of sleep. And if what was present when baby fell asleep is not present when they come into light sleep, and during the night that is every 2 to 4 hours, then they will wake fully and potentially seek that to be repeated so that they can return to sleep. It's a little bit about skill around sleep and developing their own skill around sleep. So trying to fade back that, and also trying to give baby the opportunity to go to sleep themselves with your support. They're definitely going to need your support, will help you get out of that cycle. My sleep programs can help you with that. 2-year-old doesn't nap and sleeps on average only about 9 hours overnight. Can this be normal? It can be, but I would look at the factors. So like, look at the whole picture around sleep. And if they're not napping at 2 years of age, I would definitely be erring on the side of earlier bedtime to give them a greater sleep opportunity. But there absolutely is children that are on the lower side of sleep needs. And the range for this age range in terms of nighttime sleep would be 10 to 12 hours. So yes, it's on the lower side, but it could be simply your child's sleep. Obviously, if you have any other concerns, like seek out your doctor and talk to them about that as well. A 3-year-old waking at 4:30, 5 a.m. for the day, bedtime is 7 p.m, no nap, any advice? If this is a long-term issue, then potentially it's long term and it's reinforcing, and it's been happening a long time, and baby is very used to, or toddler is very used to starting their day at that time, even with naps gone. But where early waking is a struggle, the first line of advice will be greater sleep opportunity, because it's generally down to overtiredness, particularly with toddlers, because sometimes it can sneak in during nap transitions. So early to bed is key. And like, how early? As early as you can manage when you take in your life. Yes, we're all pretty much locked down a little bit at the moment in terms of our movements because of the pandemic, but like 6 o'clock, I would be pulling the sleep opportunity back even further, like so to 6 p.m. And yes, you may find that the toddler is still waking at 5, but they're getting 1 hour's extra sleep, and that will top up that sleep debt and like really fill up that sleep tank. And then I would be looking at what's happening at 5 a.m. and changing that, and maybe trying to change the expectation a little bit around what happens at 5 a.m. So like, I wouldn't be taking toddler out of the room. I wouldn't be bringing them downstairs to have breakfast. I wouldn't be allowing them to watch television at that time, because they unfortunately are all reinforcing behaviours, including bringing toddler into the bed with you, which I know is lovely and we all love that. But unfortunately, if you're trying to get out of the cycle of early waking, it can be reinforcing. Okay, struggling with 11-month-old full sleep. I think that means that you're struggling with everything. What's a good routine? So for an 11-month-old, you'd be looking at about 2.5 hours daytime sleep. That would kind of be on the upper side, but 2.5 hours daytime sleep, split over 2 naps. I find with 11-month-olds, clock times is better than wake times, but you need to start your day at a regular time every single day to try and get on top of this. So start your day at 7 a.m. every single day. And then nap 1 would generally be landing for this age range between 9:30 and 10. And I would cap it at an hour, and nap 2 falling probably at some point around 2 p.m. So I do things a little bit differently. I don't place massive emphasis on this long nap in the middle of the day. I go by what is working. And generally for this age range, a nap of an hour in the morning and a nap of an hour to an hour and a half in the afternoon, awake from all sleeps by 3:30, and bed probably 4 to 4.5 hours after the wake of the nap. So that would be 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I hope that helps you. What age is too soon to put a baby into a cot? I found this quite interesting because I think there's a lot of emphasis put on, you know, Moses baskets, co-sleepers, cots, and cots are perfectly acceptable for newborn babies as well as they are for babies of 6 months of age. They're just bigger. So I personally would be recommending a cot from 4 months of age. This is what I put out there. 4 months of age is really good time to move from, you know, maybe a co-sleeper, maybe a Moses basket, you know, maybe some kind of bedside sleep environment to a cot. That can still be in your room if you're continuing to room share up to 6 months or beyond, but moving into a cot. So let me see. Okay, 10-week-old doesn't really sleep during the day. Any tips? Okay, so at 10 weeks of age, the daytime sleep is not mature. It's really, really immature, in fact. It kind of starts to show a little bit of sleep maturity between 6 and 8 weeks when you see those first social smiles. That's actually the start, like the real, like tiny start of sleep maturity. So what I would say, if you're not landing any sleep, then you need to start watching wake periods. So look at the wake period. So usually for this age range, like they might only be able to stay awake, like if even an hour between sleeps. So really doing whatever you can to try and land the sleep. Rocking, rolling, patting, whatever. The only thing I would gear parents away from is the feeding to sleep piece, because it ends up sometimes causing difficulties down the line. Any tips for babies with reflux? Yes, I had a real refluxy baby in my first child. Definitely hold baby up for 30 minutes after feeds. Disassociate feeding from sleep, because if you think about it, the milk is potentially an irritant to the reflux. And if you're feeding right up to sleep and putting baby down, then the irritant is there and you're potentially not going to be able to hold your sleep. I would also prop the legs of the cot. I wouldn't prop the mattress. I'd prop the 2 top legs of the cot so that you've got a slight angle, but it's still completely flat. Flat is extremely important when it comes to child sleep safety, so a completely flat surface. But definitely holding up for 30 minutes after sleep is really, really important. And with reflux babies, there is a lot of support out there now. There's a greater understanding around reflux, particularly with pediatricians and with doctors and with our public health advice. So lean into those services for sure. You know, there is a lot of supports out there in relation to that. And if you have, as a parent, a box of doubt around whether your child has reflux, go and get it investigated. If you think it's a factor, you know, go and get it investigated so that you can clear your mind in relation to it. Okay, next. Where should a 10-week-old be sleeping during the day and in what? So from 6 to 8 weeks, I would be recommending trying to put in place a consistent place of sleep. And generally, I would recommend for daytime sleep that be in a dark, quiet environment in your house. Now, this is around parental choice. If you're not comfortable with that, then keeping your baby as close as possible is absolutely perfect. You have to be comfortable with what you're doing. So a Moses basket in your kitchen is perfectly fine. But as your child progresses up through the age ranges, you probably will find they're less likely to initiate their sleep easy in a bright and a busy environment. Darkness is key to melatonin production, the sleepy hormone, and it does its best work in darkness. Sleep initiation and sleep maintenance, you know, it needs to happen in darkness. So dark room, quiet location, obviously somewhere where you can check on baby easily would be where I would be steering you. 4-month sleep regression. How do you manage the frequent wake-ups without a soother? So 4-month sleep regression is actually a massive progression in your child's body. It is the formation of circadian rhythms, the wake-sleep cycles that govern us when we're awake, when we sleep. It also is the start of huge hormone production for your child that is related to sleep. In particular, the melatonin levels ramp up and cortisol starts as well. So in terms of the 4-month sleep regression, I actually think that it is a huge milestone, and I refer to it as a progression, because it is the time where you can really start to work on sleep. You can really start to look at your sleep environment. You can really start to look at napping. You can really start to look at, you know, your child's ability to self-settle and, you know, kind of encourage them in relation to that. So I would think that not having a soother is good for the 4-month sleep regression, because it actually gives you the opportunity to support your child in learning their own sleep skills. If the baby 11-month wakes at 5, do you keep up after 9 to prevent further early rising? You need to work towards that becoming your norm so that you can shift your baby's sleep forward. So at the moment, if your baby is going down before 9, it's potentially reinforcing the early waking, I'm afraid. 7-month-old sleeps 7:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. but is tired by 7 a.m. Is this too early for a nap? I'm afraid so. At 7 months of age, that would be a little bit too early. You would be looking to maybe try push that out to 9. But again, don't push it out immediately. Work towards it. But what I'll say to you is potentially there's a little bit of overtiredness going on, because generally a 7 to 7 or aiming for a 7 to 7 routine is a little bit more supportive of natural sleep cycles. So that could be just a little bit of overtiredness happening, maybe because daytime napping is a little bit short because it's not hitting at the natural sleep cycles. So 9-month-old bed at 7:30, wakes at 4 a.m. Only a bottle will settle him. How do I get him to 6 or 7? So at 9 months of age, if it's a fully bottle-fed baby on 3 good solid meals a day and is well established on solids, I would be feeling that baby could go through the night without a feed. And maybe this bottle is a habit wake because it's a small bottle. So I would look at fading that bottle down by ounces. Don't water it down. You're only like replacing one problem with another. Children will wake for water too. So start fading it down by ounces. 1 ounce a day, 1 ounce every 3 days, until the bottle is down to like an ounce. Once it's down to an ounce, yes, the wake might still happen. So that's where you need to go, right, I'm not going to offer the bottle and I'm going to do something else in order to support my child in returning to sleep. Somebody just said, thank you for answering my question. You're very, very welcome. What would be recommended bedtime for a 28-month-old? So that's 2 years and 4 months. I would be recommending 7 o'clock. If your child is still napping, it could be 8 o'clock, depending at what time the napping ends at. So, but 7 o'clock would be my take on that, depending on the napping. Okay, bear with me. First-time parents, and I loved this question. First-time parents, 3 key things to implement when baby arrives. Number 1, 7 a.m. start to your day every single day, no matter what has happened during the night, which is really, really hard. This is to regulate the baby's, kind of body. So 7 a.m. every day with the feed in a brightly lit living space, not associated with sleep, so that you disassociate the feeding from sleep. I recommend that you swaddle. There is some amazing modern swaddling, products out there. Kaliedy, I'm sure, have brilliant ones. Look into those. Swaddling can be really safe once it's practiced safely, and I do recommend swaddling. And I recommend that you feed after sleep rather than right before. Again, this is the disassociation of feeding from sleep bit. So I hope you found that helpful. I have bits on that on my own Instagram as well. Okay, is baby sleep training, and this is in brackets, it says routine, making babies develop slower in any way? No. So I actually don't like the term sleep training because I think it has lots of negative connotations just over years of use. I like sleep shaping and working on sleep. So working on developing a solid sleeping routine for your child will only benefit their cognitive development, because so much of their brain development and their growth happens while they're sleeping. So for example, the morning nap is all about brain, and the second nap, the afternoon nap, is all about physical. They're two different types of sleep. So yeah, I would often work with families that are reporting that, you know, maybe they have, I don't know, maybe a 10-month-old that's not sitting up, and we work through the sleep program that we put together, and by the end of the program the baby is sitting, and it's because there is a greater amount of sleep happening. It would be very, very much linked to it. Okay. 10-month-old showing signs of going to one nap, have tried capping the first nap to half an hour. Okay, so the range where a child will go to one nap a day is generally between 12 months and kind of maybe 16 months. I got an anomaly in my youngest child, and he went to one nap at 11 months. It is possible for a child to go to one nap earlier than the 14 to 16 months. That's generally, you know, kind of the frame. But what I'll say to you is do everything you can to retain 2 naps. Everything you can, until you reach the point where like, this isn't happening. So I would do what you're doing, and I would be offering nap 1 between 9:30 and 10 and capping it at half an hour. And then I would be looking at nap 2, possibly not falling until 1 or 2 o'clock, and capping it again at maybe an hour and a half if you can get it. So yes, for a time frame, that's going to push bedtime late, but it will retain the 2 naps. You possibly will avoid overtiredness, which could contribute to fragmented or broken sleep overnight and early morning waking, which is the thing that everybody wants to avoid, lads. I think we can all accept getting up at 6 o'clock, but not really getting up at 4:30 and 5. It's the middle of the night. Okay. Best tips for getting a 4-week-old into her co-sleeper. Okay, this has lots of factors in it. Like if your little one is quite unsettled and very, very wee, I would be, you know, kind of doing everything you can to keep them settled, and, you know, your bonding piece. And really they're very, very small for a very short period of time. But I know as a new parent sitting looking at this, you're looking for answers. I would be trying to avoid overtiredness. So like a 4-week-old can stay awake for very little amount of time between sleeps. If you're not swaddling, potentially look at it. But if you don't start within the next week, then the ship has kind of sailed in terms of swaddling. I also might look at if there's a big bond between you and baby as a mother, maybe look at the fitted sheet on the co-sleeper and sleep with it yourself for a night or 2 so that your scent goes on it, and that might help baby feel a little bit more comfortable. But I would avoid putting things like, you know, nests inside co-sleepers and things like that. I keep it as an open, flat, safe environment for baby. But just do everything you can. You know, maybe lots and lots of snuggles and lots of input into baby falling asleep, and then put them down in their co-sleeper. They're still very, very wee. 21-month-old, no nap in creche, bed at 7, but wakes at 3 or 4 a.m, maybe 1 to 2 nights a week, and then sleeps till 8. So your child is having a split night because of overtiredness, I'm afraid. So on no nap days in creche, I'd be doing a much earlier bedtime than that. Now, I know that's, as a working parent, that's potentially very, very hard to do, because you get in the door and you've all the other bits and bobs to do, get a dinner and everything, and spend time with your child. But if you want to try and avoid the split night bit, that could be the way of doing it. Okay. Baby is just 6 months. Aim for a clock-based routine or a wake window routine. Wake windows. I wouldn't move to clock-based routines until after baby has gone to 2 naps a day. So at some stage around 8 or 9 months generally. Babies will generally go to 2 naps between 7 and 9 months. So I would still use wake periods up to that point, and then after that I would be looking more at clock times. How to get baby to wake the same time every day, finding it hard to have a routine. With a 6-month-old, I wouldn't put a massive amount of emphasis on that. I would be going with the time that they wake. You know, if it's 5 a.m, I would be maybe looking at why that's happening. If it's happening closer to 6 or 7, I would place a piece of acceptance around that and use the wake periods to create a flexible routine. I actually found wake periods much more flexible when my children were babies than when we eventually had to move to clock times. I just found it a little bit more relaxed. I found clock times kind of stressed me out a little bit. But daily sleep schedule for an 8.5, 9-month-old, finding it hard to adjust from 3 naps to 2 naps and wake windows. So again, when you have babies that are still napping, I honestly couldn't recommend highly enough starting the baby's day at a regular time every day. I know that's so hard if you're going through sleep challenges in your house, but if you do that, you're taking a step towards body regulation. So 7 a.m, would be my recommendation. No later than 7:30, you start their day. And that way then you've a stepping stone. You've somewhere to go from. So with an 8.5 or 9-month-old, I'd be looking at a 9:30 first nap. I would be potentially looking at 2 90-minute sleeps. So for this age range, 2.5 to 3 hours daytime sleep would be appropriate. So you could look at 2 90-minute sleeps in the day, and that might help drop nap 3 out. So if you have a 9:30 nap for 90 minutes and it brings you up to 11, fantastic. Then nap 2 probably wouldn't be happening until 1 or 1:30, and again 90 minutes, and then bedtime at around 7 o'clock. I hope that's helpful. And I would be looking more to clock times now. Okay, 11-month-old waking 5:30, lots and lots of early waking happening here. How to tell if it's teeth or developmental versus issues with routine. If this is happening for 4 to 6 weeks solid, you have a sleep challenge versus a sleep blip. A sleep blip is where your child won't settle for their naps 2 days in a row and then all of a sudden settles back again. Or you have a couple of unsettled nights and then you stick to consistency and it all settles back. That's a blip. If you're experiencing the same thing happening all the time for pretty much 4 to 6 weeks solid, then that is a sleep challenge, I'm afraid. So that would be how you'd know. 12-month-old bed at 7 p.m. can wake between 9 and 11, and between 3 and 5 needs a bottle. So I'd be looking at, is there a feeding to sleep association going on here? So if the 12-month-old is falling asleep on a bottle at bedtime or having a bottle very close to the sleep phase, then waking 2 hours later, which is a sleep cycle, is going to happen because they're waking, seeking the thing that was there when they went to sleep for them to be able to maintain their sleep and knit up the sleep cycles. So I would be looking at that, fading down the dependency on bottles overnight, because at 12 months of age, a bottle-fed baby doesn't require feeding overnight nutritionally. So I'd be looking at fading that down and then changing the expectation around the wake in whatever way suits your parenting style. And this is something I talk about a lot in my sleep programs. There isn't one size fits all when it comes to working on sleep. Everybody has different sleep goals, and everybody has a different sleep way with their family and different ways of parenting. So I really feel that families should have options open to them rather than there only being one avenue to work on sleep. We're coming to the end of the first lot. 9-month-old will only sleep for 40 minutes for the first nap and 45 minutes to 1 hour for the second nap. Any advice for lengthening naps? I went through this on one of my IGTVs recently, how to lengthen naps. So this is a lot about timings. If the nap is being offered at a time that isn't in line with maybe natural sleep cycles for your child, then they're unlikely to sleep for a long period. So it could be under tiredness or over tiredness. There's also sleep capability. So if your child is dependent on something to fall asleep, then they may still require that to go through the next sleep cycle. So that's one bit. Also, some children do need a little bit of help in learning to knit up their sleep cycle. So if a child wakes after 45 minutes and is always lifted, then they're not getting the opportunity to knit up the cycle. So maybe giving them a little bit of time. Now, albeit supportive time, you're present, you're maybe the other side of the door, you're watching, you're looking at a monitor, you're listening, you're physically there, maybe if that's what you choose to do in the room with the child, but giving them the opportunity to resettle could be the way of knitting that up. Okay, how to transition from next to me, crib to cot. So like any co-sleeper or bedside sleeper to cot in their own room, please. So the recommendations are that children room share up to the age of 6 months in a room with a parent. Okay, so that's one thing. I say you could start by having baby put down in their cot in their own room for naps initially, and then go with nights. So you might do a week of baby going down in their own room for naps, and then you start offering it as their consistent place of sleep always. That's one way of transitioning. But guys, there's nothing wrong with picking a night and going, we're going to transfer baby into their cot tonight, and they're going into their own room, and I'm going to support them through that change. There's nothing wrong with that either. Okay. My little girl will only nap in her buggy. Any advice for getting her to nap in her cot? 9 months. So this is again maybe something along the lines of, you know, consistent place of sleep. Maybe your child only knows their buggy as where they nap. So you can change this around by starting to put baby down in their cot for their naps. But because it's not somewhere that's familiar to them for naps, they're definitely going to be a little bit frustrated about the change, and you're going to have to support them through that change. I often say to parents, make a plan. If you're really serious about creating a cot napper, then you have to expect that there's going to be some frustration around the change. Be prepared for it and know what you're going to do to support the child in the change, be consistent with the change, and continue to offer the cot as the consistent place of sleep. It's not that there's necessarily anything wrong with buggy napping. It's that cot napping is more restorative because it happens in a dark environment. And buggy napping is not supported by childcare providers. So cot napping would be the way of getting the most restorative sleep possible for your child, which is going to support their growth and development. How do I get baby to nap longer than 30 minutes twice a day? So again, we talked about this. This is down to timings, and this is very dependent on age range. So if you have a child of under 6 months, their daytime sleep is very, very immature. It only starts to mature from 4 months, and the first nap to mature is actually the first nap, the morning nap. And the second nap doesn't even really start to mature until closer to 6 months. So I would get a lot of contact from parents over being frustrated that they can't get this holy grail of a long nap in the middle of the day for their 5-month-old. It's completely normal that you won't get that nap because the sleep maturity isn't there. You might land the nap, but it'll be short, very potentially. But if you're really consistent around what you're doing, then you're giving your child the opportunity, you're providing the supportive sleep circumstances for them to be able to sleep really, really well. Is it possible to have a sleep routine with a 3-week-old, or when can I start routine? Oh, yes and no. Okay, the only thing I would be telling you to do with a 3-week-old is start your day at a regular time. After that, it's all about bonding. It's about getting your feeding skill in if you're a breastfeeding parent, you know, working up your supply. It's really about that bond. I wouldn't allow baby to sleep through feeds. I would keep a regular feeding schedule so that you're minimizing maybe how much baby needs to feed at night, but a 3-week-old could be feeding every 2 hours at night, or some will go longer, it depends. And obviously if you've had the advice that you need to wake baby to feed, you need to do that. But definitely starting the day at 7 a.m, not allowing them to sleep through feeds, and trying to get them, you know, as much sleep opportunity as possible is probably where I would steer you now. For a 10-month-old, what is the daytime sleep times and amounts, please? So a 10-month-old, I wouldn't be recommending much more than 2.5 hours daytime sleep, split between 2 naps, an hour in the morning and an hour and a half in the afternoon. You will notice that I always recommend a shorter nap in the morning, except at the stage where a child is going from 3 naps to 2. At that point, I recommend that the napping is even. And the reason I recommend a shorter nap in the morning is because if your child is having a lot of their sleep in the morning, and this really applies to children on 1 nap a day, if they're having a lot of their sleep in the morning, that sleep is actually potentially taking from the night, and that can cause early morning waking. Plus you have this big long wake period from the end of the nap to bedtime, which can create overtiredness. So you'll notice that I do that. I recommend that the shorter sleep is in the morning. I would generally say with this age range, first nap at about 9:30 and second nap at some point around 2 o'clock. That'd be generally what I would find would work, maybe 1:30, 2. I have a toddler who is an early riser. Lots of early risers, unfortunately. I went through a spate of it myself with my own kids, so I totally get it. Have tried early bedtime, but the day kicks off at 5 a.m. anyway. So I would stay consistent with the early bedtime. I'd look at the napping and what time of the day it's falling at. It needs to be falling in the middle of the day. If you are reinforcing that early waking by doing napping prior to, 12 or even 1 o'clock with a toddler, then that could be a reinforcing factor. I would look at what's happening at that time. And I would, if you feel there's any dependencies or reinforcing things going on from parent to toddler, then I'd look at really trying to work at fading those things back so that you're doing everything you can to fade out early waking. I have a lot of information on early waking on my own Instagram channel, Babogue_Sleep. There's blogs on it on the website, babogue.com. There's a lot of information there. And on my sleep series page on the online program, we work through a lot in relation to early morning waking. So I'm going to look to see if there's any questions here that I can answer. Okay, I've got one there which is interesting, and it's probably in relation to early waking and the child waking about 5, that mum has tried not feeding, but they've a fear of waking the 3-year-old. And I so get this because I've got 3 children. So I remember when I had my second child and the fear, the pure fear of waking the older child in the middle of the night if things were unsettled. Sometimes to get past a sleep challenge, you need to divide and conquer as parents. So one parent needs to take older child if older child wakes and handle it, and you guys have an agreement as to how it's to be handled. And the other parent takes maybe the baby that is experiencing the sleep challenge. So that's one way of trying to work past that fear of waking the other child, which could be holding you back from moving on with maybe quite a settled sleeper. Okay, I am just going to read this one about twins. So many twins parents, 4-week-old twins just home from hospital. Is it okay to nap most of the day in the bassinet from the buggy, or should they nap in different positions, sleeping next to me at night? Okay, I'm not a big fan of napping in the bassinet in buggies because this is a sleep safety standard. I would much rather see maybe them napping in a Moses basket or a crib in the kitchen or the living area, wherever you guys are most. I'd be looking at the bassinet and the buggy and just making sure that, the safety guidelines are there and there's plenty of breathable. So I would be gearing you more towards traditional things like a Moses basket or a crib. That would be where I'd be gearing you towards. Should you swaddle for day naps as well as night sleep? Absolutely. All sleeps up until the age of between 8 weeks and 12 weeks, until your child is showing the signs potentially of rolling. But I like to encourage parents to transition slightly before that for fear that baby would roll in the swaddle. 8-week-old sleeps during the day, wide awake all night. How to change this around? So start your day at 7 a.m. As hard as it is, start your day at 7 a.m. Maybe get one parent who's going to sleep. So myself and my husband always divided. So I handled babies at night and he slept, so that when I would get up in the morning, having maybe not had a great night, we had one rational person in the house, aka him. And if it was a really bad night, baby was handed to him and he knew what to do. You know, if I had done a feed, it was done and I went back to bed. So starting your day at 7 a.m. will help regulate. Don't allow baby to sleep through feeds, and try and do a little bit of stimulating time after feeds so that you're encouraging an age-appropriate amount of wake time. Okay. 6-month-old sleeps 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. 7-ounce bottle at 6:30 a.m. sleeps 7 to 8 a.m. Okay. 3 naps during the day based on 2-hour wake period, but naps are only 40 minutes each. How can I prolong the naps? So this could just be down to timings and also the sleep maturity piece that I'm talking about. So because you're not starting your day till 8, that nap isn't falling until 10. So the drive for sleep may not be behind it. Doing a 7 to 7 routine would actually be more in line with natural sleep cycles. So that could be part of it, that even though your child is following the 2-hour wake periods, the drive for sleep maybe isn't behind it. So that's one thing I'd potentially change. I actually would maybe accept the 7:30 a.m. start, do a full feed at that time, start the day and do your nap at 8:30. That's how I would maybe get out of that cycle. Also a 6-month-old, yes, 2-hour wake periods are great, but sometimes they need slightly longer, and sometimes wake periods get longer as the day goes on. So I hope that's helpful. 8-month-old suddenly resisting sleep at bedtime, takes an hour or more to settle. I would look at the amount of daytime sleep. So if it's on the upper side of 3 hours, I'd look at that. If you've a third nap in the mix, I would start shaving it back. There's a few little factors there. So maybe the third nap is still in the mix and that's what's contributing to baby taking a long time to settle. It might be time to start shaving it back, and in the interim maybe push bedtime out a little bit. Somebody said thank you for answering the question. You're very welcome. Tips to support a 6-month-old who's just moved to cot, very hard to settle. Maybe do an in-room. So, you know, a lot of people, you'll have all done your Googling, right? And you'll be very familiar with all of the different methods that you can place around making change with sleep. And a lot of them are out-of-room methods. You know, you're in, out, and that can actually sometimes create frustration depending on the child. And it also can be really hard for parents to follow through with. So maybe look at an in-room method where you stay with baby, you know, you sit at the side of the cot in a stool and you stay with baby and support them while they're making the transition and getting used to the cot. You can do plenty of input. I would just recommend that you keep the room dark and that any communication between you and baby is very low. You know, lots of whispering. Notice I've brought my voice right down. You know, very, very low, lots of shushing. But you can support baby in getting used to their cot. It's just a new environment for them. Okay. Is it okay to put a 3-month-old upstairs in their crib for daytime naps? If you're comfortable with it, you can. So I would say if you've got a good video monitor, you know, any of the really good monitors out there, I'm sure Kaliedy have loads of them, but a good video monitor, and as long as you're checking baby on a regular basis, you can do that. So you're creating a consistent place of sleep for your child, and that is, you know, part of what lays sleep foundations for children and for families. So you can, but only do it if you're comfortable with it. A lot of families want to keep baby, you know, in the living area close to them for, you know, a long spell of time. But it does reach a point where doing that maybe is not as supportive of your child's sleep as you'd like it to be. So I have reached the end of the questions. If somebody drops in one in the next few seconds. Oh, there's another one. Staying with baby seems to be more successful here. I've tried going in and out, but felt it was stimulating my baby too much. So there you go. So this is what I mean by there is so many ways to do this, and you have to take into account the temperament of your child, your parenting style, you know, and what feels okay to you. So I think that's really, really important, guys. Really, really important. Karen just hopped in there saying, have a toddler. This is the lady who is putting her child potentially in their own room for naps. have a toddler, so feel he's disrupting sleep. Very possibly, Karen. I went through that myself, darling. You know, my eldest is Quinn and Kate is the middle one. Absolutely. Like, Quinn was looking into the Moses basket and disturbing her full time. And definitely around that age, she would have been, that was my parental decision, she would have been in her own room for naps. A 5-month-old can only manage an hour and 15 minutes of wake period. Any morning gets overtired. Is that normal? Yes, it is normal. Because you have to watch what your child is showing you, Martina, and they're showing you that they're tired. Now, if you're finding that you're not getting any sleep success with that and you're getting close to 6 months, you may need to start to lengthen wake periods with your child. So that you do that by working it forward by 5 minutes a day, ever so gently and slowly. You may stay at a point in time, like a wake period, for a little bit, and then you might inch it forward a little bit more. So I would go with it for the minute. But you might find you might need to adjust things the closer you get to 6 months. So guys, I hope you found that really useful. I love answering sleep questions. I hold a regular Q&A session every single month on my Instagram account, Babogue_sleep. I love supporting parents, because I remember when I was having my children, I felt that sleep supports everywhere I turned, there just didn't seem to be any. So for me, my goal is to help as many families as possible achieve the gift of sleep. Oh, there's 2 more now. Oh, so I'm going to just answer them. Okay. Still breastfeeding and bottle feeding my 1-year-old, but now wants a bottle in his cot after a breastfeed every night. Is that okay? Don't want him to get used to it and into a habit. I would avoid it, Brita. I would avoid it, because that's potentially an association with feeding and falling asleep on the bottle. It also will leave milk in his mouth, and that's not good from a teeth perspective. So I would avoid it. When do toddlers typically stop daytime napping? Have twins here. They will nap some days and not every day. They're 2 years old. Generally from about 2.5, you would see daytime sleep need with toddlers really fall off. Generally, I would find if a toddler is still taking a nap at 3 years of age, potentially there's sleep challenges in another point. People saying thank you for answering questions. You are very, very, very welcome. So listen, guys, if you want to learn more about me, check out babogue.com. My Instagram, as I said, is very active. I release out content practically every day and a regular video every Tuesday to help families with their sleep goals. I want to thank the team at Kaliedy for doing this and for helping you guys to get some of your sleep questions answered. So I hope you have a great Wednesday evening, and I will catch you all soon. Thanks a million.